Hi, my name is Philipsen. I am a professional Scrum Master, and I'm here today to talk about empiricism and how we see empiricism in the elements of the Scrum Framework. Empiricism is really very simple. It's about learning through experience, sensing things for yourself. We learn by trying. It's experimentation. It's an idea that's been around for hundreds of years, been philosophized, and really it's about doing and learning by doing and seeing what happens. Let me give an example of daily life, regular real life empiricism. The other night I was having dinner with my son and my wife was out and it was just the two of us. We had 4 cookies left and I said, why don't we each have a couple of cookies and leave one for mom? And my son said, well, how many do we get? I said, well, we get 1.5 each. And he sat there and he couldn't quite figure that out. He's in elementary school and I'm pretty sure he had gone through halves. So he's sitting there thinking and he decides, well, if we each get 1.5 cookies, that'll leave 2 for mom. I said, no, that's not the math. And I said, what's 1.5? We get 1.5 each, so what's 1.5 plus 1.5? He sat there and he thought, 2.5? No, not 2.5. So what we did, we employed empiricism. We actually physically touched the cookies. We each get 1 cookie, and then we get another half. And I said, how many cookies are we going to eat total so we can leave mom 1? And he looked at it, and he couldn't quite figure it out. And then he took the 2 cookies and put them together. And he said, oh, 3 cookies. And I said, you're right, we get 3 cookies. So we learned through touching and his senses, and he learned through experience. 1 plus 1 plus half equals 3. Actually put the cookies together. It was a very cool moment. But how do we relate that to the Scrum Framework? Now we're going to think conceptually, but we're going to actually use examples of empiricism in the framework and the elements. Okay, so we have our Scrum Framework, roles, events, artifacts, we've got our elements, we've got our sprint goal, definition of done, our 5 values, we have our feedback loop. But how do we find out what works best? Well, it's through our empirical process control theory. Transparency, inspection, adaptation. That's how we figure out what is the best way to work. And at the end of the day, how do we deliver that value to our customers more frequently with an even better value? It's through empiricism. So let's talk about our framework, roles. I'm going to take one role of the 3, and let's talk about empiricism, and let's talk about the dev team. So the dev team, I worked with a team about 6 months ago, and they were a team, they're an integrations team, it's very technical, it's very IT-based type of team, but they were missing something. They knew that they had some skill gaps, yet their backlog was growing, and they were really delivering some pretty good value, and they were happy with where they were, but they just knew that they had some skill gaps, and with the work coming, they really wanted to add a new team member. They felt now was the right time that they could deliver more value, but they weren't sure how. So what did we do? We coached the team to figure out how they could fill those gaps. What did they really need? So empirically, what we did was we formed a matrix, a graph of all the skills that they thought they needed for this team and the work they were going to be doing. And they listed all their team members, and then they filled it out. Who's strong, who's intermediate, who's weak in all of these skills that they listed. And 2 amazing things happened. 1, they identified very clear skill gaps that they could then go and find a new team member to bring to the team. And 2, they decided, let's use this as an opportunity to teach each other some things that we didn't know. They weren't doing that before. The transparency of their skills were not visible for everyone to see and understand. So again, it was that feedback loop, and we decided to do something using transparency. They inspected what they had and they adapted. And sure enough, they found a new person to join the team, filled those gaps, and every week since, they have had a learning moment, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, but they dedicate that time to teach each other those skill gaps. Very cool use of empiricism, and it certainly delivered much more frequent value. This team went from a release a month to now averaging 1.5 releases per sprint, delivering value more frequently, able to prioritize things because they have the skills in the team. Really neat use of empiricism and visible effects and outcome. Second one, so those are roles. We use the dev team. Our 5 events. Let's talk about the daily scrum. An easy place to see empiricism, but hard to inspect and adapt yourself. Several years ago, I worked with a team that was building a collaboration site. And it was a fairly large team. We were right at the top. We had 9 on the dev team. And every day, we would have our daily scrum, and it was a long discussion. We had kind of a round robin format. Everyone answered their 3 questions very traditionally. But we didn't really feel like we were hitting all the elements, and we certainly weren't creating a plan every day. The problem became that we weren't being transparent about our work. We were just asking people the questions, and it started to go through the motions. Bad habits formed. We decided to inspect. Obviously, we transparently saw that. We inspected how we were working our daily scrum, and we adapted. And what did we try? We tried an empirical experiment where we talked specifically about the product backlog items on that visual board. Every day, we talked about each item, how we were working, what kind of plan we had, if there were impediments, and certainly how were we able to work toward our sprint goal. Everything became transparent, whereas prior to that, it was not transparent. That inspection and adaptation allowed us to really focus on the work, and that work went on through. We were able to get better feedback loops with our customers because we were able to have more interaction because we knew where we were with the work, and we knew what kind of plan we needed. And sure enough, believe it or not, more value was delivered because of the way we changed the way we created our daily plan in our daily scrum. It was another really cool use of empiricism, and again, that was many years ago, and it shows that empiricism doesn't change through the years. Those are our events. That's an example from our events. Artifacts, we've got our 3 artifacts. In this case, let's talk about the product backlog. About 2 years ago, I worked with a team. Their focus was on meter inventory. It was for a utility. And it was a brand new team. So we started with a visible product backlog. And what we did was we took the product backlog items, they were printed on index cards, visibly put them in vertical rows. Well, it was very transparent, and we certainly were able to order our backlog. However, when we needed to change order or when new items were added that were higher priority, it became physically difficult to change our product backlog visibly. And we inspected this. The product owner and I really kind of talked through how can we have a better system and what outcome can that have. So we inspected our product backlog, how it was, and we decided to try an experiment, empiricism. What we did was we formed horizontal rows with space under each row, and that space was intended for work. That allowed us to change priorities easily. We had a place to put cards. It was just physically easier to work up there. But a really neat outcome happened. The dev team moved their refinement sessions to the board. Instead of doing it away in a separate room or in their space somewhere else in our team space, they really went up to the board. They had that working space underneath. It was an unintended outcome, but it was a beautiful outcome. They started doing their refinement. They broke down those product backlog items into smaller items, more manageable, and that also helped with prioritization. And would you know, we delivered more value because we were able to break that work down. We had space to work, and certainly we had a better ability to prioritize the backlog. It was another really neat physical, tactical way of learning and seeing what experiment we can run and what that outcome would be. A side example was later on, after we had several releases, because we were able to so easily reprioritize our backlog, we actually decided to completely change gears and take a field trip with our users. We spent time with customers, and again, using our physical, easy to manage backlog, we're able to completely reprioritize to something that we didn't even think was important, but what our customers told us was valuable, ended up getting through there, delivered, and the return value that we got back was greater than we could have ever imagined. And I really think it was just because of the chance we took, the experiment we ran with that product backlog. These examples from the framework really show that empiricism's main goal, and the use of empiricism in Scrum, is to get to that value point, is to deliver value more frequently and to deliver the best value we can. Of course, maximizing the value that the dev team can deliver. So with that, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity and live empiricism every day with cookies and value. Thanks, have a great day.